Welcome in, everybody, to another season, episode, whatever you want to call it, new edition of Bayou Bengal Bites, where we're breaking down the 2024 LSU baseball team. I'm your host, Chet. Got my co-host, Tyler from Sports Scramble. Tyler, how you doing today? We're excited for some baseball?
Yeah, happy to be here. This time of year just makes it feel like Christmas morning. Again, coming off of a national championship makes it feel better. So we'll see the Tigers repeat. But looking forward to a great season. The SEC is loaded once again. I think there's like 6 teams in the top 25. So once again, this is
Depending
going
on
to
the
be a loaded
ranking you
conference.
look at.
Excited to see some new faces too, because LSU definitely lost a lot of talent on offense.
Definitely. You mentioned coming off the national championship season. Never easy to repeat. Hasn't been done very often. LSU did it way back when. But this is a team as good as ever. It's primed for at least a second trip to Omaha. I think that's what a lot of fans are expecting. Looking back at last year, it ended in the ultimate victory, taking down Florida in Game 3, bringing Jay Johnson bringing his first national championship to the Tigers. And then in the offseason, you lose a lot of key guys like a Paul Skeens, Dylan Cruz, Trey Morgan, Gavin Dugas. Kay Peloso, of course, has moved on. There's more. There's right fielder, can't remember his
Braden Joe
name,
Bear.
Braden Joe Bear. Uh, the list goes on and on. And pitching wise, a lot of guys we didn't even get to see because they were injured, get drafted. So I would say it's a rebuild for the 2024 season, but it's a reload. You still got a lot of young talent like a Jared Jones, Josh Pearson. We'll see what the catcher position brings. But I think for this first video for our baseball preview, Tyler and I are going to kind of break down each position group, who we expect to see start, look at the schedule coming up, kind of give our predictions on what our SEC record will be, series we're looking forward to, and I think we'll give a way too early final projection as to where we think the Tigers are going to end up. Spoiler alert: I would love to see them repeat, but I'll try to keep it realistic. I think they have a good chance to, though. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if you really look on paper, there's definitely a lot of talent. I know that they lost, like, if you want to compare to like the talent that they lost to, it's the 2019 football team. There's like, it's not
Definitely.
like there's like too many first round draft picks. There was three. Paul Skeens was pick number one, Dylan Cruz was two, and then Todd Floyd was the compensatory pick with the Cincinnati Reds. So
Yeah.
I think if you're looking at pitching wise, though, I think that Jay Johnson, this is his third year. This is his best pitching staff. Because if you remember, year one, it was pretty. His ace was Mikael Hilliard, and after that, it was just throwing up a prayer. Last year was Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens, coming out of Air Force, he had some question marks about him. He was a two-way player. Was he gonna, you know, pitch more? Was he gonna still be a two-way player? That ended up happening. Then Ty Floyd, he was inconsistent throughout the season, and then Sunday, it was like I don't have no idea who's gonna pitch. Like sometimes
Right.
it was Christian Little, sometimes it was Thatcher Hurd, and sometimes it was Jamin Coleman. Like winning on
It
Sundays
was
was pretty
chalk.
much the offense has to score 10 runs. I think that this year you'll have three quality guys and maybe at least two guys being first round talent in next year's MLB draft. So definitely excitement and a lot of talent, at least on paper. We'll see once the Tigers hit the field.
Well, you started with the pitching, so let's dive right in. And you mentioned Ty Floyd. That's one of the Tigers I forgot that got drafted. We had so many get drafted. They completely slipped my mind, but he was, crucial to the national championship run. Um, let's start with the starting rotation. Of course, Thatcher Hurd returns. The big question is, what Thatcher Hurd do we see? Do we see the Thatcher Hurd that we got at the beginning of last season, where he couldn't really seem to find the strike zone? Or do we see the Thatcher Hurd that you saw in the postseason in Omaha, where he was just absolutely nails, and he comes in and is really a difference maker in that national championship game. I like to think we see the latter. I mean, Hurd's had a whole offseason. He's comfortable in Baton Rouge, has not gotten a lot of hype, in terms of like preseason awards. I think he was named to the All American list or first team All American, so that's really the only one. But a lot of the preseason awards and things have been for transfer Luke Holman out of Alabama. So in terms of a weekend rotation, I think that Friday night job is is Statzer's job to lose. I think he did enough at the end of last season to prove to Jay Johnson and new pitching coach Nate Yeskie that he's your guy. So I like him in the Friday night. Another transfer we got in, where he transferred from, I can't remember. Gage Jump, big lefty,
UCLA.
UCLA. He
We're
was
familiar
actually
with that.
yeah, he was Hurd's teammate until he had Tommy John surgery and missed last season. Thanks for that reminder, Tyler. But he's the first lefty that we potentially will see that seems to be the new revolution on this LSU staff. When you had Paul Maneri, you didn't have any lefties. It was all righties. I mean, one year we had all righties. And then Jay Johnson comes in. They've gone through 4 pitching coaches in the last 4 years or last 5 years. And now Nate Yeskie comes in, and it seems like the lefty pitching is a priority. A lot of the bullpen guys are lefty. So I would imagine Gage Jump slips into that Saturday spot. And then, like I mentioned, Luke Holman, Friday night guy from Alabama. A lot of Tiger fans know him as the scratch before the gambling betting scandal from Alabama's head coach. But I think it's a third Hurd and Holman probably back and forth for a Friday or Sunday, depending on who's having the better start to the season. You see Gage Jump in that Saturday night to kind of mix in that lefty. What do you think about that, Tyler?
Yeah, I agree that those are going to be the 3 guys. That's going to be your Friday through Sunday, or if you're playing on a Thursday, the Saturday
Right.
series, those would be your guy. But Thatcher Hurd, had some ups and downs in the season when you needed him the most, though. Like Jay Johnson said in the preseason, if we're going to win the national championship and hoist that trophy, we're going to need Thatcher Hurd. At the beginning of the season, he had some games. The Tennessee game, he gave up 6 runs before giving up getting an out. So that was definitely not a great outing. And then Mississippi State, that implosion of the game, pretty much everybody, like Christian Little, he imploded that game. Thatcher Hurd, I think he gave it like 4 runs before recording an out. So he had 2 stints. But if you really look at the back end of that schedule, the Georgia series, he was able to shut down the door in that crazy game. I think it was like game number 1 or game number 2. And then in the regional, when Ty Floyd, he pitched 3 innings and then they had that rain delay. It's pretty much the story of both the regional and the super regionals of the rain delays. But that Hurd came in and shoved. I mean, his curveball is absolutely elite stuff. I think that the stuff is there. We've been hearing in the fall that his fastball is getting up to 97, 98. So that's definitely great news to hear. And then we all know in the national championship series, he gave up that 2-run bomb to Wyatt Langford in the first inning. And then after that, didn't give up a hit and went 6 innings, which is definitely huge. And we saw what LSU's offense was able to do. So I think that Thatcher Hurd, with his experience, I think that his stuff is definitely there. He just has to be consistent. That's pretty much with every pitcher. You just want to be consistent. I think that Thatcher Hurd, he has the experience. He's played in the big games before, so I think he goes Friday night. I think that Luke Holman goes Saturday. I definitely get where you're coming from of sandwiching in that lefty just to get really a mix in there. But Luke Holman was a Friday night starter at Alabama. I guess, like you brought up, with the Bohannon, that he was pretty much forced to be the Friday night guy, but that's not saying anything bad about him. If we really look at down the stretch, he played, pitched really well against Florida in the SEC tournament, and then also against the Wake Forest team that was really good and was claimed to be unbeatable before LSU took them down. But he really played well. I think his fastball isn't quite up to where Thatcher Hurd is. He's been sitting 93, 94. That's pretty dang good to me. I mean, that's still a good quality. It's not like Paul Skeens. Like, we're not going to get Paul Skeens with 102 coming out of the gates anymore. That's just like once in a blue moon shot. But I think that Luke Holman, with his experience as well, you want the experienced guys getting those first 2 starts. And then Gage Jump, like you mentioned, I do have some concerns with him. I definitely think that the stuff is there. But coming off of the Tommy John surgery, he hasn't pitched in 2 years. So that layoff is definitely going to be questionable there. So I just don't know how much you can trust him of getting, like 100 plus innings this season coming off of Tommy John. So I think that Sunday role is going to be his to lose. But I think that there's a guy in waiting of Cam Johnson, the freshman, that's probably going to involve once LSU's in the postseason. That would be my pick for Cam Johnson to be number 3.
So you bring up the Gage Jump injury. It's also going to be interesting to see how much they limit him at the beginning of the season. So maybe he fits better in a Sunday role. I was just thinking strategically righty, lefty, righty, but it would make sense to put him in a Sunday role. It's say, and for an example, we've already won the first 2 games of the series. Yeah, you want to sweep, but that Sunday is a good to let's see how far we can stretch, gauge, and then maybe before we get into our bullpen, and bring a guy in like a Cam Johnson or someone like an Ackenhausen. And that's what I kind of wanted to get into was that relief pitching, right? Let's start with closers. I think Gavin Guidry is a bona fide pitcher. Of course, in the fall, he got a lot of work in the field. But with the addition of Michael Braswell, I don't think we'll see Guidry at shortstop anytime soon. I think they're going to focus on him coming out of the bullpen as a closer. You mentioned Cam Johnson. The man, he's a freshman, 6'5". Like, he's a big dude. Lucky that he came to LSU and not to the big leagues. I've heard he's touching 98, 99 with that fastball. And then Justin Lauer, am I saying that right? From Xavier. He was Xavier's guy, and coming in, I think he'd be a good back into the bullpen closer guy for LSU. But then the big difference from last year to this year, now barring injuries, like that always happens, the middle of the season, you get some guys out. If LSU can stay healthy, that bullpen is deep. I mean, I didn't even mention Nate Ackenhausen, Aiden Moffitt, everyone's favorite, Sam Dutton. Of course, everyone has heard my predictions on Sam Dutton, Griffin Herring, Javen Coleman, Christian Little. And then there's some guys that we haven't heard of, freshman wise, DJ Primo, Cade Anderson, Nick Bronzini, could potentially be a midweek guy. I mean, I'm looking at names. I'm counting 15 right here on the list that I have, and I haven't heard of probably 8 of them. So of course they've been on the team, but you didn't see them a lot last year until literally the floodgates opened, where our bullpen could not get an out and we were losing games, like you mentioned, Mississippi State. So, Tyler, give me your predictions for a bullpen. How do you see that? How do you think they'll fare after last season?
Yeah, I think that, like you mentioned, one of those guys will be a midweek starter. If I had to pin a midweek star, I think I will go with Griffin Herring. I think he looked really good down the stretch too, especially in Omaha against Tennessee and then against Wake Forest as well. He had some big quality outings, and he was only a freshman last year, so got some good quality innings under his belt. I think the more experienced guys will be more your long relief guy, like you mentioned, Justin Lauer. He'll either be a midweek starter or he's going to give you, whenever the starter gives 4 or 5 innings, it's going to be him coming right out of the bullpen. I think that Javen Coleman, I think that he's due for a breakout season. He had a phenomenal freshman season, but his couple of injuries, coming off of a Tommy John surgery, he was very limited last season. He pitched in Omaha and in the postseason as well. And then Nate Ackenhausen, Nasty Nate. I mean, whenever LSU wouldn't have won the national championship without Nasty Nate delivering what he did in game number 2 against Tennessee. I mean, 6 quality innings of baseball. Like, that was just
he's your Riley Cooper of this season.
It's like every time
lefty.
Riley Cooper was definitely a stud too. So I think that's going to be your really top 3 guys, number 1 guys coming out of the bullpen. Christian Little, I'll be interested to see if he can turn it around. He has the stuff, but I think that with him, it's like, man, command is everything from it. He draw like so many walks. I just look back to he was like first or second year at Vanderbilt. Like, he was a starter at Vanderbilt. He was a real good quality start whenever Vanderbilt made that run to the College World Series. But like you mentioned, the closer, I think it's going to be a combination of Cam Johnson, just because, like you mentioned, like topping off at 98, 99, like he's too good. Like, he probably shouldn't even be here, but he chose to come to LSU for at least 3 years. And then Gavin Guidry, I mean, that man
dropping the hammer.
Yeah, he's dropping the hammer. Like, he's got an insane curveball. He pitched in big games too. So I think that if LSU is clinging on to a 1 or 2 run lead, Gavin Guidry has been that guy to really close down the hammer. And then some injuries to watch. I don't think that you're going to see Chase Shores pitch this year. I think he suffered that injury in the Tennessee series where he tore his UCL. Right. And then Jay Newt, he's also coming off of a Tommy John injury. Maybe you'll get him at least at the back half of the season. Maybe you can get him in postseason play. So it's probably going to be limited work for Jaden Newt. And then there's obviously some transfers to watch and some freshmen, some talented freshmen that you got in your recruiting class of this year.
Yeah, you mentioned Chase Shores. Though I think the timing of the Tommy John is if you see him, I wouldn't expect to see him at all. Like Javen Coleman, of course, had his Tommy John surgery much earlier. I think that his was right before the season started. So that's why you saw him kind of midway through last year come back. I'm interested to see how he feels because really you never let him go. It was always he was kind of dialed back a little bit because he honestly they brought him back kind of early, but they really had to because they didn't have anybody to pitch out of the bullpen. Um, so Shores, I think the benefit of having all the talented freshmen we had last year who stepped up at big moments in the postseason and whatnot, they've all been there before. So you don't have to really worry about Shores not being there. You want him to get healthy. Will we ever see him pitch at LSU? Who knows? He was talented enough to potentially get drafted next summer, and we may never get the chance to see him again pitch. But if he were to come back, it would probably be a regional or super regional weekend if you needed somebody out of the bullpen and like stuff wasn't working and you had to have somebody new. I think it's when you would see him because it would be very late in the season for us to see him. Let's switch gears to the guys that they're throwing to catcher position. We talked pre-show. You and I disagreed on who we think the star would be. I personally, you got three guys all coming back, didn't lose anybody. Hayden Travisky, Alex Milazzo, and Brady Neal. Neal started the season. Milazzo was a little injured, kind of in and out. And then when Neal got injured, it was a Hayden Travisky, Alex Milazzo show with Milazzo taking the primary duties. But then Travisky was, of course, the big bat that everybody knows. I personally think that Milazzo is going to get the majority of the starts, get a Friday, Saturday, and then maybe have Brady Neal start Sunday. Neal has the better bat than Milazzo does, but I think Milazzo is the best catcher in the SEC, if not the country, defensively. And he's developed as a hitter. He's your bloop single. He takes professional at bats. He gets on base. He can drop down a bunt. He's not hitting home runs like Travinsky or Neal, but I think he's done enough in the back half of the season and this offseason to develop as a hitter to get that nod as the everyday starter. And then you might see Neal on a Sunday or a midweek game to still get those reps, but still battling for it. I mean, it could flip at any point in the season, and I'd be happy with whoever was starting because if you remember, Neal was 17 years old starting in college baseball. I mean, that is unheard of. So, Tyler, tell the people why you think it'll be Brady Neal starting for him and catcher.
Yeah, I think that, like you mentioned, I think that he has more offensive firepower, especially with his bat. Yeah, he has more power than Alex Milazzo. I can't even remember the last time if Alex Milazzo has hit a home run.
He has not hit a home run in his collegiate career.
So I think that it's pretty much of a luxury to have three quality catchers. Two veterans, and then Brady Neal. He played a couple of games. Honestly, if Brady Neal didn't get hurt, he probably would have been your full-time catcher, but suffered that injury after the Arkansas series. But I think it's pretty much a given that we all know that Hayden Travinsky is pretty much going to be the full-time DH. You got to put it his bat in. He pretty much carried LSU's offense all the way into Omaha, and then pretty much everybody else took over from there. But I think that he's definitely proven as a catcher. But Alex Milazzo, he does it with his defense. But if you remember last year, he batted 289. That's not too shabby.
That's what I'm saying. He's getting
in the SEC. So a couple of years ago, he was batting 135. It was abysmal. And Jay Johnson came in and changed up his swing like he did for a lot of guys that's been struggling. Kay Beloso, his swing changed, and then boom, he was pretty much the MVP of LSU's postseason. So I think you really can't go wrong. You're probably going to see all three guys at some point behind the dish, but for game number one, my prediction will be Brady Neal. I think that Jay Johnson, he's been an offensive mind. I think that if he started Brady Neal in game number one last year, I don't know how you go against him. I think that coming off of the injury, he's healthy. Alex Milazzo also coming off an injury, too, that he suffered in the last game that LSU played in 2023. So I think you can't go wrong, but my pick will go with Brady Neal.
Okay. Well, we'll see who is right. Jay Johnson tends to play that pretty close to the vest, so we probably won't know till Friday at 1:25. Yeah, it's gonna be Jared Jones back there behind the dish, the Bear. And speaking of the Bear, let's get to first base. I believe it will, in fact, be Jared Jones. You saw him play there when Trey Morgan was out in left field a lot last year. He has to be in the lineup for his bat alone. Now it's a matter of DH or first base. I think you could potentially, if he's not getting it done at first, maybe you see a Hayden Travisky go to first base and Jones be the DH. But the big thing I want to see from Jones this year, we all know he's got the pop. We all know he's got the contact and he can hit him out of the ballpark. I want to see the strikeouts go down a little bit. I want to see him take a little bit of more professional at bat. You can't fault the kid. He's a freshman. He still had great stats. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think he had like a 30% strikeout rate. So not bad, not great, but he was kind of chasing a lot of pitches. But when he connected, buddy, did he connect? So I'd like to see him take a little more better approach at the plate. I'm sure they've been working on it in the offseason. And see him limit those strikeouts in the big moments. And then defensively, nobody will ever match Trey Morgan. I mean, probably the best first baseman college baseball has seen in a long time. The things he did were insane. The man was full out doing the splits like a rubber band out there, elasto man. But we've got a great infield. If you can get in front of the balls, not let him get by you. I mean, Jones is 6'6", 6'5", something like that. He's a big dude. You're not getting much by him. And what he brings to the plate is unmatched. So my pick for first base is Jared Jones.
Yeah, Trey Morgan was a flash in the plane, first baseman. Jared Jones is going to be more of a traditional guy. He's pretty much going to use his big body and be like, here you go. Like, he ain't going to make some athletic plays that I have never, ever seen on the diamond from Trey Morgan before. But I agree with you, Jared Jones. I mean, his freshman season, 14 home runs and hitting 300 in the SEC is pretty dang good for a freshman. But like you mentioned, the strikeouts, he can hit the fastballs, but he cannot really touch the breaking balls. So he definitely has to cut down on the strikeouts. Like you mentioned, 30%. That's not too good. Get that down to 20%. Then we're going to talk. So I think that there's probably going to be a little shuffle early on. Like maybe we see Jake Brown, the freshman. He's been very versatile. He's more been playing in the outfield. Another freshman, Larson. Larson's been pretty much the primary first baseman too in this little intra-squad scrimmages these past couple of weeks. But I think nonetheless, Jared Jones, I think that with the power, you got to put his bat in there. I think that his defense, I don't want to say like elite like it was with Trey Morgan, but it's good enough to be at first base. So I think the Bear will be at first base.
Also, a little tidbit about Larson. He's the top high school bat in this class that did not go to the pros to make it to college. So we'll see what comes out of it. I mean, he may have just as good of a bat as Jared Jones does. He's also very fast runner. So you might see him in the lineup as a pinch runner, stealing some bases. Let's get to my old former position, second base. A new face there this year coming out of the outfield. It's just a projected starter for me, and I think that's what kind of consistency is. Josh Pearson. A lot of people don't know Pearson was he came out of high school as a middle infielder, as a second baseman. So he knows the position, but he just did what he needed to do to get playing time as a freshman. They had him in the outfield. Wasn't a day one starter last year, but worked his way back into the lineup and honestly was crucial to our Omaha run and our national championship winning team. The biggest thing that sticks out for me is Pearson is how is he going to adjust to playing second base at a collegiate level? He might miss a couple ground balls early till he gets kind of his feet under him. But what he does, and I could see him honestly batting leadoff day one. He generates a lot of walks. Like I said, professional at bats. It's kind of what Jay Johnson preaches. He works pitchers deep in the count, and that's what you want from your leadoff guy. You want that pitcher struggling early. Before you get to guys like Tommy White, Hayden Travisky, who are going to just nuke it over the fence. So my pick for second base is Josh Pearson, a backup potentially, Ben DePaul. Struggled big time at the plate. You would see him come in and try to lay down a bunt, but he is a very good defensive player. So I think we'll see him kind of be subbed in when we do make those defensive changes late in the game. So.
Yeah, I think it will be Pearson too. We saw this pretty similar to what Gavin Dugas had to do. He came from the outfield and went to second base. So I'm not looking for you to be an all-around defender. Like, just make keep
the ball in front of you.
Just keep the ball in front of you. Make the plays when you need to. But yeah, like you mentioned, Josh Pearson, he struggled last fall. He wasn't really much of a threat to begin this season, but man, he was a threat to the end of the season when it mattered. He was also having an impressive fall too. I mean, the power is definitely there. He can has the speed to turn a single into doubles and triples too. So I think that he's going to be a really quality back. I think he's going to be one of those guys to look at to really have a breakout season. If LSU wants to make it back to Omaha, he needs to have a good season too. So I think, like you mentioned, Ben DePolt, he's definitely a good. If Josh Pierce isn't doing for you in the field and you're up by a lot, then you can put in Ben DePolt for defensive substitution. We saw that last season whenever. With Brady Neal and Alex Milazzo, it wouldn't be surprised if we saw the same thing with Ben DePolt too. So I think that nonetheless, it's going to be, as we like to call him, the Scotty Scheffler lookalike at second base.
Yes. We'll see if his driving game that we see from Scotty translates to Pearson's bat on the field. Hopefully it does. It did a lot last year. Next to his counterpart, the middle infield shortstop, I think we're going to see the transfer from South Carolina, Michael Braswell III. Great defender, great all-around defender. Really popped off his freshman year in terms of offensive, but kind of struggled last season in his sophomore year. And all articles I've read, seems like a great kid, but he just needed to change his scenery. Maybe the coaches weren't developing him right. Little dig at South Carolina there, hitting in that bandbox of a stadium they've got. Only hit one home run, which coming off of Jordan Thompson, I mean, that's kind of how Thompson was until last season. I think he had 8 or 9 last season. And that was when he really broke out, but he was a great defender. So I don't think we're going to see a drop off in terms of defensive play from a shortstop position because you're taking a starter from another SEC school to fit right in as the starter for LSU. It'd be interesting to see what Jay Johnson does with Braswell's bat, though, and how they've coached him up in the offseason. Other names to mention, Gavin Guidry. He did come in a little bit shortstop last year, but I think he'll primarily be a pitcher this year. And of course, DePolt can fill in at shortstop as well if he's not filling at second base. So, Tyler, what do you think on Braswell being the starting shortstop?
Yeah, this feels like it's Michael Braswell's position to lose. Jay Johnson has been really high on him. I mean, at the start, like he was pretty much like the first transfer get. So that says something about what Jay Johnson was looking for. Like you mentioned, Jordan Thompson definitely was balanced for you. He was good on defense and he was good with his bat. Had a little bit of pop too. I don't think that Michael Braswell has a little bit of pop, but he's been hitting some homers in the fall. So we'll definitely see whenever. The games get on going. But his defense, like you mentioned, his glove is definitely elite. He's got a lot of SEC experience with South Carolina. So we'll see if the offense is there. But I definitely think that he's going to give you the defense every single play.
And we don't need everybody to hit home runs every at bat.
No.
Just base hits, hard base hits. That'll win you ball games. Going next to him at third base. Doesn't need any introduction. Mr. Tommy White, Tommy Tanks. Everybody loves him. Everybody knows him. Was on the mic'd up show. He's fully healthy. Of course, it said he had a torn labrum, surgically repaired. His shoulder must have popped in and out probably every game. He said every time he threw the ball. So what we saw an injured Tommy Tanks do, I'm excited to see what a healthy Tommy Tanks can do. I mean, my goodness, he might eclipse that 30 home run mark this season. I've got huge expectations for him to pick off right where he left off and just continue to soar up. But Tommy Tanks, I mean, that's got to be a 4-hole, probably a 3-hole hitter, and then Travinsky is a 4-hole hitter, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing to say about Tommy Tanks. I mean, this is going to be his position. I'm definitely glad to see what he can do fully healthy. I mean, he's coming off of a season 105 RBIs, and he said himself, his shoulder popped out like 20 plus times. But we'll see if he gets that many RBIs. He doesn't have Dylan Cruz anymore to hit in front of him. He's just getting pretty much on-base machine. So I'm interested to see how Jay Johnson stacks this lineup. Like you mentioned, I think we're going to see Tom either at the 3-hole or the 4-hole. I'm sure we're going to see Travinsky behind him. Either way, they just pretty much put – 2 guys back to back who can just send a baseball like 400 feet pretty much every time. So nothing much to be said. I think that Tommy Tanks is in for a heck of a season. This will probably be his last season in Baton Rouge. He's definitely going to be a top 10 draft pick, maybe even top 5 draft pick.
No, I agree with you there. And especially in the lineup, having a guy like Travinsky behind him that basically forces the pitchers to pitch to Tommy White because Travinsky can do the same thing and hit a home run. So it's going to be a matter of how your Travinskys and Bear Joneses do behind Tommy whether or not he's going to be walked every at bat or if they're going to actually try to pitch to him. It was a similar situation with Cruz and Tommy. Moving to the outfield, we had the transfer from Arizona who actually played under Jay Johnson, Mac Bingham, transfer in. I think we'll probably see him in left field. And then, of course, some people call him Dylan Cruz 2.0. I don't know if you could go that far, but he's got a lot of high expectations in Paxton Kling. We saw him flash last year as a freshman, but of course, injuries kind of hampered him a little bit with that hamstring injury to where he didn't really get a lot of playing time towards the end of the season. But this is his time to shine, be the captain of the outfield at center field. And then I think for right field, you're going to see, like you mentioned earlier, Jake Brown move in, the freshman, who's also a pitcher. But I think he's just too good not to be in the lineup, and they're going to supplement at right field and then just kind of see where he meshes with the team, whether he needs to move to first base. Maybe he comes out for a bullpen. But those are my three picks with Bingham, Kling, and Brown roaming our outfield.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're going to see Bingham and left or right. I think that pretty much everybody in this can really go anywhere. I think Kling, he's got an elite speed. I mean, he's probably the fastest guy on your team, so you got to put him in center. And then Jake Brown, talented freshman. Paxton Kling didn't get too much reps last season. That just you just had too much talent. But he was a real high recruit out of high school coming out of Pennsylvania. So we'll see if he can put it together. I think that his defense is there. And then Mac Bingham, I've really been impressed with him in the fall. Hitting 382 at Arizona. The Pac-12, isn't the SEC, but if you can hit 382 in any of the Power 5 conferences, that's impressive too. So obviously you're going to be seeing a lot of drop-off. You're pretty much losing pretty much every guy in the outfield, especially with Josh Pearson moving to second and not having Dylan Cruz and Braden Jobert there. I mean, nobody's going to be Dylan Cruz this year, as much people want to say. So it's going to be a lot of drop-off in the outfield, but I think those are three quality guys throw in the outfield.
I hope Kling proves us wrong, and he comes back and he's Dylan Cruz 2.0.
Hey, if you want to hit 15 home runs, go for
it. Yeah. So let's shift gears to this schedule. Of course, the Tigers open it up against VMI on Friday, the number 2 ranked team in the country, according to, I think it was Baseball America. Was the rankings. I'm just looking at whichever one's got them higher. That's the one I'm mentioning. They've got LSU ranked at 2. Kind of a tournament style. You've got VMI, Central Arkansas, VMI and Central Arkansas. You play 4 games that opening weekend. And then you've Stony Brook. Everybody remembers Stony Brook. They come to town the next week. And then you've got the Astros Foundation Classic in Houston, where Friday night you take on Texas, and that's really your first test of the season. LSU was able to beat Texas on that Dugas Dugas late inning home run, right, last year.
Yep.
So we'll see how that fares out. Couple more weeks. The big SEC schedule starts off hot. I mean, you travel to Starkville. I know Mississippi State has been down the last 2 seasons.
They beat us last year, so you can't really overlook them.
That is true. But then you go Florida at home, who, of course, you face in the national championship, at Arkansas, Vanderbilt at home, at Tennessee, at Missouri, Auburn at home, Texas A&M at home, Alabama away, and Ole Miss at home to end the season. So that run of Florida, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, those 4 weeks are going to be one grueling schedule. Tyler, what do you expect from our Tigers out of that?
I think you got to win the series at home pretty much. I mean, I know it's a brutal schedule, but at least you get Florida and Vanderbilt at home. I mean, Florida's right up there in the top 3. They're number 3. Vanderbilt's in the top 10. I think that Florida, they're definitely going to they're bringing back Jack Caggs too. This is going to be a loaded lineup, but they're going to be stacked. So this is going to be definitely a challenging series. That pretty much that 4-game stretch. Honestly, if you go 500, cool, because if you go 500, that's a win in my book. If you go more than 500, that's great.
That's great. Awesome.
1 or 2 wins under 500, then you're a little panicky, but you're able to honestly just survive this, because the back half, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's more manageable than the first half. You're pretty much facing 4 straight SEC teams that are in the top 10. I mean, if they win 2 out of the 4, your RPI will be good enough for you to host again. So I think it's pretty much going to be survive the first half and then pretty much go to
Same as last year.
Yeah, survive the first half, and then that's in the second half. That's where you can really attack to get some wins. I don't want to say like these are like where like the worst teams are because Alabama, Ole Miss,
They
Auburn,
all have the
Texas
potential to
A&M
beat you.
are in the second half. They all have a potential to beat you, but it's not as tough as facing pretty much going to be the four main dogs in the SEC all 4 straight weeks.
Yeah, the 4 straight weeks is hard.
Yeah.
We expect to play them. It's similar to last year. We had the beginning of the season. We opened up with some tough teams. Texas A&M was ranked in the top 10 at the beginning of the season, and then, of course, we had the Tennessee game at home. South Carolina, Arkansas. Did we play Arkansas last year?
Yeah, we played Arkansas after Texas A&M, I believe.
That's right. That's right. So it's going to be tough. One big big weekend I'm circling is Tennessee in Knoxville. That's become the college baseball rivalry there. LSU and Tennessee. Their stadium's going to be rowdy. So it'll be interesting to see how our guys handle that. But a home series I'm excited for is Florida. I mean, bring them back to the box. We beat them in the national championship. Caglianone's there. Let's see if he can hit a home run out of Alex box. He can hit him out of the tiny little Florida stadium. But I'm excited to see. I mean, that's the end of March. You come off of playing in Starkville. You get La Tech in the middle of the week. That La Tech game is always a good game. Half the time, La Tech beats us. That'll be an exciting matchup to see Florida come to Alex Box. Tyler, what weekend series are you looking forward to the most?
I think I'm going to go with another home series, Vanderbilt. I think last time that we played Vanderbilt, it was on the road, and they had an offensive slugfest on Sunday, putting up over 20 runs. I think that Vanderbilt is going to be really good too. I mean, there's really everybody's going to be really good on this schedule. I think that Florida, just because of the national championship vibes, are going to be very hostile environment. I think that the box is going to be rocking for all 3 games, but I think that Vanderbilt could definitely be a sneaky team to watch in the SEC. I think that the Tennessee series is going to be great too. It's pretty much becoming a budding rivalry between these 2 baseball programs. LSU got the best of Tennessee last year. Tennessee got the best of LSU a couple of years back. So we'll see who wins it this year. But I'll go with the Vanderbilt series since you took the Florida series.
I like it. What's projection on final SEC record?
Well, they got 19 wins last year, so I'll go a step down from that. I'll go 18 wins. I think that's going to be good enough. I think that the schedule is going to be good enough. If you get 17, 18 wins, you're pretty much if you get 20 wins in this, you're going to be a top 3 national seed. No ifs and buts about this. But I think that they get 18 wins. It's going to be good enough for them to host postseason play at the box. So I'll set my record at 18. I think that to really, like you mentioned, that 4 series stretch, they're probably going to lose 1, maybe 2 of them. They're probably going to lose one of those road series. It's always tough to go on the road to Arkansas. LSU in the past have struggled to beat Arkansas, especially at their home field too. Tennessee as well, they had some struggle there too. So I think go with 18 wins.
Well, I also was going to go with 18 wins, but I guess I'll be a little different. Give me the 20. Give me 20 and 10. We'll shoot for the stars here, Tyler. We'll shoot for the stars. Well. With that being said, I think as we round out the show here, final projections for where you see LSU finishing at the end of the year. Are they hosting that trophy once again?
I'm not going to set my expectations too high of setting the trophy. It's very difficult in any sport to go back to back, but I think that LSU is talented. I think that their offense is going to have a little bit of lull. Don't panic if the offense is scoring only like 3 or 4 runs a game in the first couple of weeks. This offense, when it comes to put to the postseason, they're going to be ready. I think that this pitching staff is absolutely loaded. They're as deep as they've ever been for Jay Johnson. So I think that the Tigers get back and tread their way back to Omaha.
I agree with you. I think I'm expecting them to get back to Omaha. I think that's just a lot of the fans' expectations.
That's just expectation here. I mean, I'm not going to say anything less. So,
would I be ecstatic if they won up me and went back to the national championship? Of course. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they did it, honestly. But I really think what Jay Johnson has built here, the fans aren't going to settle for a regional host and getting knocked out in a super or something. You're expecting Omaha. Man, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that with the amount of talent. And the players expect Omaha. They don't say they're defending their championship. They're attacking. So that's exactly what you want to hear from them. I think I agree with you there. The offense may start a little slow when everybody's kind of getting a feel for it, but then they are going to be red hot like they were last year. And I think the major difference is that bullpen is not going to cost you games. They're going to keep you in the games this season. That's my projection. So we got Tigers going to Omaha again. If you're watching, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Let us know in the comments what you're most looking forward to this year, players you expect to pop off, what you think the final projections will be for the season. Make sure you stay tuned as we're starting up Bayou Bengal Bites. Each week we'll mostly just be doing baseball, but we'll touch on other LSU sports. Tyler, anything else to add to the fans?
That's it. Let's play ball.
Go Tigers.